Now, Lyme disease has been a topic on this radio show numerous times, and it's a disease that spawns, quite a bit of controversy, and definitely there's a lot of unanswered questions. Now, one of the researchers trying to find these answers is Catherine Brissette, PhD. Dr. Brissette is a assistant professor at the University of North Dakota, and she has research interest in the host pathogen interface of the bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi, the causative agent of Lyme disease. In addition, Dr. Brissette was recently awarded an NIH grant to study some of these specific aspects of Lyme. Dr. Brissette, welcome, ma'am, to the show.
Thank you, Robert. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, pleasure to have you. Let me start with, Lyme is a pretty complex disease or a syndrome, and it can present symptoms for lengthy periods affecting several areas of the body, including the CNS. What I want to ask you first is something that you're interested in is, what is post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome?
So many people, when they've had Lyme disease and have been treated with antibiotics, will continue to have lingering symptoms for several weeks. But in a small population of patients, those symptoms last more than 6 months after they stop taking antibiotics. And those symptoms include pain and fatigue, joint and muscle aches, headaches, and neurocognitive complaints. People often complain that they're in a brain fog.
Now, I've had different guests on here that would use the term chronic Lyme. Others will not. Do you use the term chronic Lyme?
I don't. It's very controversial in my field,
right,
as you're well aware. I think the problem with the term chronic Lyme for me is that we don't always know if people who are suffering from those clusters of symptoms, if they've actually had Lyme disease. And when the symptoms are chronic, we don't know if it's because people are still infected and the bacteria is still actively there, causing these problems, or if the person has some other infection that kind of gives the same constellation of symptoms. So things like Epstein-Barr, numerous other viruses, some of the other tick-borne pathogens can all cause kind of similar symptoms. So
right.
I don't like to use that term just because I think it's a little imprecise, and these people are really ill, but we just don't know what the cause is. So I'm hesitant to use chronic Lyme.
Gotcha. Now, you've been involved in quite a bit of Lyme research. I looked at some of your papers, and you write controlled trials of long-term antibiotic treatment for post-treatment Lyme disease symptoms have failed to show benefits. If active infection is not responsible, what causes the persistent lingering symptoms in patients treated with long-term antibiotics? Our data suggests Borrelia burgdorferi is a hit-and-run pathogen. What do you mean by a hit-and-run pathogen?
Well, I guess my idea is that it's like, you're driving in your car and you get T-boned and the person drives off, hit and run. The damage is done and you're left dealing with the consequence. So Borrelia burgdorferi doesn't make toxins like other bacterial pathogens that you might think of, like anthrax or plague. And so most of the damage caused by Borrelia is your own immune system's response to the pathogen. And what I started thinking about was that maybe you don't even need the bacteria anymore. So let's say someone's been treated with antibiotics. The antibiotics work, but they still have symptoms. Well, there's a couple of different things that could drive symptoms in the absence of the infection. So one of our ideas is that Borrelia burgdorferi may be inducing modifications that kind of flip a switch so that inflammation stays on even when you would normally want to turn it off. So when you get an infection, there's this inflammatory response. So let's say you get a cut and it gets infected. It's hot, it's red, it swells, it hurts. And that's all part of the normal response to an infection, and that's a good thing. But you also need to be able to turn that inflammation back down. And if you're not able to do that, then you could have these lingering symptoms. And we think that Borrelia may actually be sort of flipping that switch. So even once the bacteria is gone, the damage is already done.
Interesting. Okay, now lastly, 'cause I know you're short on time, you were awarded this NIH grant, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
To pursue a unique approach to fend off the effects of Lyme disease. For my radio audience, in the simplest terms, can you explain what your research will entail?
So what we're really interested in are these molecules called microRNAs. And basically what microRNAs do is they can turn off the expression of certain genes. And so in the context of Borrelia, what we think might be happening is the bacteria is inducing these specific microRNAs that then turn off the expression of certain genes, and those are things that are needed to heal and turn off the immune response. And we've found in our studies that Borrelia does induce these specific molecules. And so what we want to do is to identify all the microRNAs that are induced by this bacterium during an infection. We have a rat model of the neurological effects of Lyme disease. And what we'd like to do is be able to link the expression of those specific molecules to the disease process. And then eventually what we'd like, and this is what I think is really exciting, is that these microRNAs, these molecules, even if they're made, say, in your brain, they can end up in your bloodstream. And there's a lot of interest in other fields, like in cancer, to identify these molecules and use them as then biomarkers. So how that would work is you go in to the doctor, you think you have Lyme disease, you get a blood draw, they look for these markers, and if we can map which one of these are associated with particular symptoms, then maybe we could say, yes, you have Lyme disease, and based on this profile, you're more at risk of having long-term symptoms, so let's treat you more aggressively. So that's our sort of big picture where we'd really like to go with this.
Oh, it sounds very interesting. I hope you come up with something. There's a lot of people looking for answers, as you know. And again, congratulations on the grant, and thank you, Dr. Catherine Brissette, for your time and expertise, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Robert. It was a great pleasure to be on today.
Thank you. Okay.